let's do it. Carissa, go for it.
Okay. Well, Jean.
Yes.
Leah.
The thing I'm going to talk about today, besides mark making, which we, you already kind of got a head start on that, is making your own sketchbook. Something I've been thinking about is that we spend a lot of time making weird paintings in this class, not doing anything with them. And I got into art because of the really what I would call dirty, crafty side of mixed media. Not what we've been talking about, not high, expensive, good quality paper, good quality paints, things like that, but like cardboard and the weird side of mixed media that is just really kind of scrapbooky. And so I have two journals that I'm going to share with you today as an example. Obviously, I don't have my fancy tripod and my second camera because I'm not working right now, but this is a very expensive sketchbook by Ravelry. Okay, I think it's $35. What makes it special is that it is specifically a mixed media. She's so funny. It is a mixed media sketchbook, meaning that every page is a different style of paper. The intention here is that you can experiment on a bunch of different papers. You can see some burlap here, right? Where I have actually like stitched and added using what's called a cold connection.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a watercolor paper. This is raw canvas right here.
Oh yeah.
Right. So I got this book that has all of this. I mean, it's a little bit of everything. It's even got some like newsprints, all kinds of weird stuff are in here. Darker papers, so you can try. You can tell that this is one of those sketchbooks that just gets a bunch of everything shoved in it. So you can see that it's got like a darker toned paper, like we've talked about. This is a spread on the darker toned paper, right? This is a spread I did in Florida. 2 different colors of paper, same colors of paint, that kind of thing. So I bought this very expensive sketchbook a long time ago, and I've been working in it since. The burlap's really hard to work on. It's good to experiment and learn about things. It's hard to work on. I do a lot of like stitching and stuff like that in it. But, I prefer to make my own sketchbooks. I bought this one because I like it. I like that it has it's a Ranger product, which is Dina something. It's very lovely. But during COVID, being stuck in my house, I was going to do a sketchbooking class. It's been rescheduled for live and in person for my students. And because what happens is I tend to collect stacks of papers, all kinds of weird papers. Some of them are like papers I've written on. Some of them are smooth. Some of them are watercolor papers. And I tend to collect them in stacks like this. And essentially I bind them and use them as a sketchbook. So this is the one I just created while being in COVID. This is my cover of it. I went to art thing here with a Carolyn Drake, who's an artist who does these fabric things, and I had kept one of her kits and it was just sitting around. This is a piece of paper that was part of that dyeing process that I use. But in this one, you can see where I've used some pieces of already done paintings. I haven't started working in the sketchbook at all. I used some plain brown newsprint. This is actually a map, pages from a
cool.
atlas. This is
oh my God, I should, if you give money to it's one of the world peace things. They send you a map every year, and I'm always like, I was keeping them for a while and going, what am I going to do with it? That's brilliant.
This is exactly the kind of thing.
Now I know what to do with it.
This is an antique typing thing. And then of course I threw in there also high quality, really heavy duty watercolor paper. And I bound it together myself, created. So I've got a whole sketchbook and then I put a cover on it. So you can see where I've added pieces of stuff that I started, I just kind of did it this way. I'm going to very briefly I'm not going to fully go through the process of binding because I just don't have the camera to show that to you.
Mhm.
But I'm going to show you the tools that you need. And I can guarantee that if you go on YouTube, they'll show you how to bind. But I will talk about the materials you need so that you at least have some guidance there.
Could you
So-
also just have a notebook that pre-exists? And then as you do things, just kind of glue them in?
I do that all the time.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the actual exercise that we're going to work on today is a mark making exercise. And what essentially the exercise is intended to do is to have fun and to create collage matter that would go inside of this. I mean, I have all kinds of weird things in this one, like this page of it's like a wrapping paper, but I just really liked it. And I was like, I'm just going to keep this and, see what happens. So you can, or all of those maps that you've been keeping. I have a drawer here because I'm at my home studio where I have stacks of mementos. These are like all kinds of weird paper mementos from my life, from childhood, my dad's childhood. And when I go through and make like a letter from my friends from being a kid, when I go through and make these books, I will often throw in a couple of the pages,
Mhm.
And I also use, like you're talking about, just like gluing it in and using it. I have a personal project that I've been working on for a long time, where I am making collages about my life using personal mementos. And it's a similar thing. You can find all kinds of weird things. This is like a Polaroid of me when I was probably 19. A bunch of personal papers that that this is my mom and dad, and my dad's thing from his funeral. And I go through and I save them in these really beautiful, huge sketchbooks that you can also emboss, like beautiful pieces of work. So saving all the weird papers from our life is very useful in abstract art. You can use it in 1,000 different ways. So you're going to find ways for those maps. A couple of things just that you need for this that make a difference on having good versus bad is what's called a bone folder. I have a bone folder in 2 different styles here. This bone folder I really like because I feel like, especially if you're making smaller books, which I do tend to make tiny books too, it helps you create the crease in the pages that allow you to stitch them together. And especially if you're creating like that black book has probably 40 or 50 stacks of them, whereas this book has 5, right?
Yeah.
Way easier to bind together than that thing was. And this bone folder does the same thing. It's when you fold a piece of paper in half and you make it really flat and really make that crease beautiful. But this kind of bone folder is kind of a new style, and I like it better personally.
And you can make marks with it.
And you can make marks with it. An owl is another thing that's required. One of these.
I got lots of those.
So that you can make pre-drill, essentially, the holes in the paper to
What
stitch
is
it
it?
together. I get book
Why do you
binding.
have alls?
Why?
Jewelry making.
Making, okay. I'm like
But
curious.
yeah, I was gonna say they're used for like everything. Though.
Yeah. I mean, if you work with leather at all, like I've done some work with leather.
Right.
Yeah.
I bought this stack of bookbinding needles. What makes them special in comparison to other needles, because I used to just buy the biggest needle I could find, is that their tip is not sharp. And they have a big enough eye that you can get waxed thread through. You bind with waxed thread. That's kind of the key. And then, of course, I use waxed linen thread like this.
You could use dental floss.
You can use dental floss, totally, 100%. Dental floss would probably do really well for you. So I don't do, there are 2 other steps that people often do when you're binding. One is kind of a tape that you use to hold things together. And then the edging here is glued, and that way you can put a cover on it. I don't always do that. Sometimes I just leave no cover because it's a sketchbook. It's not really a final presentation. But once you have a sketchbook, whether you bought the fancy $35 black sketchbook that I bought, or you bought this thing and you got all these weird pages, you got to go through doing something with them, right? So, or if in this case, you just have this giant stack of pre-done things. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be creating some gathered marks, meaning we're going to use all these weird pieces of paper that we have and create some collage material essentially for ourselves, which is great for all those weird things that you have. Now you're ready to go. So you can either work in a sketchbook like this. I don't usually start in my sketchbook though. I like to start on loose papers that I can add to my sketchbook. And I like to do like a full day's work of basic mark making. I'm going to show you guys what I have in my weird little home studio. Hold on. So I have, this is how I got my maps, there's a free little library in the coffee shop that I go to. And I found that somebody had a full-size atlas that they were just throwing away. What did I do? I grabbed it.
Yeah.
Why not? If I didn't pay for it, I don't feel bad destroying it.
Right.
Maps are a big theme for me. So I'm going to rip out some of my maps here. The badass mamma jamma COVID lady I am. And then, where did I put, oh, it's right here. And this is the book that I use for collage material. This is my typing book that I was talking about. Some things as you're out in the world and you come across these free items, because that's really where they are, it's like free piles and stuff. Remember that if you're going to be posting a picture of your collage or putting it out there into the world as artwork, you have to have legal rights to use some of these things. And so dates matter. So in theory, collage, as long as you manipulate it enough, you don't have copyright issues because you have created something new. A lot of people just avoid it entirely by using work that's old enough. I think it's 75 years past.
I was going to say it's 75, I think.
Right. So these are antique pages that I have from over 75 years ago. And the map I'm just going to destroy. So I'm not going to feel bad about it. And then I have my lucky packet of papers. This is all the things, the weird things I make in weird times that I don't know what to do with and I keep for moments like today. So a couple of things about using papers like this. I preach a lot about the weight of your paper because your paper has to withstand what you're going to do to it.
Right.
What is the alternative that I have told people if they want to use paper that's really thin and light? We're going to clear gesso it.
I gesso my 400 weight watercolor paper.
I do too, because I like the tooth of it. I gesso my sketchbooks. I've actually gone through and gessoed all of this so that I can work in it. You know?
Now, do you gesso if it's something like burlap or something? Even that?
With the burlap, you have the issue of burlap, in particular, like this kind of burlap, has giant holes.
Right, right. It would go right through.
It's not necessarily a painting surface the same way that you might think it was a painting surface. It's meant to be more, I think, used as a collage surface, like I did up here, where I sewed in with my sewing machine collage things. And then I actually did work on regular paper and I sewed it on or glued it on. I use Mod Podge a lot. This one was done with these little brads. And so I tried to paint it. One of these pages, I felted it earlier. I did gesso it and then I spray painted it because spray paint kind of works. And it's right here. You can see where it's like rock solid, like so stiff, right?
Yeah.
It's its own thing. And it looks kind of cool, but it was really hard. It was not easy. So, I mean, you can.
Do you ever use like parchment paper or onion skin paper? You're really thin, but you gesso it to give it texture,
just to give it
weight.
Yep. So I'm going to encourage you. I mean, you're at your house. You have the opportunity to scavenge for weird papers that you might want to try, or use whatever paper you have. I'm going to start by gessoing my papers. I do, like I said, I gessoed my book, but I didn't gesso these papers. And we're going to work on creating our own kind of collage material. The key about this, which is why I'm cutting or ripping it all up. The key about this is, you know, marks can be really beautiful, but simplicity is key here. Repetitive marks, the same mark over and over again is successful. Big marks and letting that dry is successful. Other ways to be successful during this kind of thing is to choose a color scheme. Keep it to 1 or 2 colors. Do a dark and a light, generally is what I do. And make your marks with those colors. Let your different weird papers be the thing that adds interest to what you're creating. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to work on them together. This paper is so cute because it's got these great
That's wonderful.
images on them. They're going to be really fun to use, but I'm going to start by gessoing everything. And you probably should gesso what you're going to work on today.
I pre-gessoed my 4 little pieces.
Oh, because you're so smart.
I always gesso before our class.
Well, you know, leave it to you to be together. I have COVID brain. I'm lucky. I'm here.
That's gonna be a good excuse for a long time.
Yeah.
I think I got about 3 days left on it.
Okay, well, keep talking. I can hear you. I'm gonna go look for stuff.
Yeah, she's going to go searching for paper. So I'm just, for those watching at home on the repeat, which is really what this is about. I'm just going to clear gesso my pages. You can see I'm just painting them, and then you have to let them dry. I talked a little bit about this paper that I was going to use, this other paper. Problems that make this really messy and irritating are that these lighter weight antique papers are going to curl. So I tend to bring a piece of cardboard, this case of pizza box lid, so that I can kind of flatten it out as it dries. Clear gesso is great because it's clear, and it's got my favorite tooth, this one in particular, which is Liquitex. However, if your paintbrush has any residual colors on it, it is definitely going to create the same thing for you. Normally, I also have a little tiny jar of white gesso because sometimes I like to create kind of a white flat point on top of these things to work with, but I'm sure that is still at my other studio, the place where I work, and I'm not allowed to be because people be there.
Just found an old atlas.
See, I'm telling you.
See, sometimes being a hoarder pays.
You know, when I did mixed media like this, a lot was my primary type of my primary form of art. I had so much stuff. When I started doing larger canvas abstracts, I reduced it down to kind of one collection of books that I use regularly. I have an old real estate manual. I have an art materials textbook from like 150 years ago. Things like that, things that symbolically relate to the work that I do. The reason I have this weird typing book is I think that it's very interesting as somebody who is in that weird exennial or whatever they call us now. Remembering typing on a typewriter, but also remembering when we got computers.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to the most interesting podcast today with an interview with somebody who was talking about their experience of kind of rising to fame in New York City as a DJ during the blogging era. It's not that long ago.
No.
But it's interesting when you consider the kind of ownership of media, how it's changed.
Mhm.
Meaning, one of the things that they were talking about was like blogs, how different kinds of blogs could like make or break, and how it was hard to prove defamation lawsuits
Right.
using blogs. And now they talk about like social media has allowed us to be in control of our own personal storytelling, but
Mhm.
it's also given rise to like fake stars.
Right.
Okay, I'm gonna be right back. My dog just made a terrible sound and I gotta go invest.
Okay. Well, I just learned one thing.
What?
You don't need nearly as much gesso for regular pieces of paper than you do.
Right? Because it's not being soaked
Because
in.
now I got like way too much on. So
Yep. And you're gonna learn about like the buckling,
yeah,
like
yeah.
this one. It's like a curly curl, But I mean, that's kind of the fun part of doing this with weird pages that aren't necessarily art paper. And obviously, there's pros and cons. One of the things that I like to do, which this paper is how this paper is made, is using watercolor and almost dyeing it.
Mhm.
This one used brushes to make these marks, but the paint was actually like soaked into the pages. And this is, it looks like maybe another vintage book of some sort. Oh, an electrical manual.
Cool.
And so these can't necessarily be gessoed. While the clear gesso is clear, watercolor made these marks. Watercolor, when it gets wet, becomes watercolor again and
Right.
can't be used the same way that say acrylic could be. So I have to be careful with these pages because they're used differently. This is definitely just rice paper that has absorbed watercolor. I've talked about it a little bit before, but I use a tin to absorb the paint into the
Right.
papers, and then I let them dry so that I can use them on days like today. Some of it's just repetitive marks like this. This is kind of the stuff we'll be doing today. We'll see how it all plays out. We're going to be making kind of a mini vision board of marks, I guess. Gathering of the marks. Luckily, the clear gesso doesn't take very long to dry.
Yes. However, I now have gesso all over everything, so I have to go wash up a little bit.
That's real. I really tore these up into like 1.5 billion little tiny pages. You know what? We're talking about like, have I clear gessoed? I've never clear gessoed rice paper. And I just stumbled across the piece. So I guess we're going to clear gesso rice paper and see what happens.
Okay.
It like burlap, super porous.
You guys are having way too much fun.
Wrapping paper.
That's Gesso the cat.
Well, I was just gonna say, Inkling now has gesso on his tail, so.
Of course he does.
It's clear gesso. It's not that big of a deal.
I love it.
Well, I mean, who needs? I've got it pretty much everywhere, but thankfully I'm at a place that I'm allowed to. Paper. Let's find out what happens. Okay. Now we're gonna find out. We're just gonna let things dry. Woo! Party time. That's probably a little bit much coming that close to the camera like that as I set up into that, but that's cool. Okay. Let me see if I have anything that's kind of dry. Because tend to be okay. Yeah, this one's getting there. Oh man. Okay. One of my favorite things about these silly little typewriting things is, if you remember when we used to work on certain letters and you just type
Oh yeah.
words over and over again. This one's interesting. It's Q. They're working on Q and P. Aqua, quail, a quail, queer quails. Well, oh man, I definitely
How progressive.
queer gessoed the wrong side. It's not from a time period that queer meant anything good. It just meant weird, I think. We're gonna have to clear gesso the other side of the paper, as I am definitely 100%.
You need the queer quails. Absolutely.
You need queer quails. What I was gonna tell you is it says kill freed.
Kill free.
Yeah, such a weird. A rural lad has a queer lass as a pal. Queer pals, man. This
Very progressive. They had no idea.
as
That would
as
be
a rural
banned in
queer.
Texas.
What? I just can't even. It's weird to think of myself as a rural queer. Having spent so long.
Well,
in
queer
Scotland.
was used more in the UK to just be like odd than it was here.
Yes, it was definitely always kind of a negative thing. I remember when I started using it because my mom is a lesbian.
Uh-huh.
She was just, I can't believe you would use that
Yeah.
word. And while she would never identify that way, now I think she's definitely come to allowing other people to choose what they want to identify.
I do volunteer work at Sage sometimes, not since COVID started, because I used to do dinner service and they still haven't started that back up. But they always say, please don't use the word queer, because there's so many older folks that to them it's still a pejorative.
You wouldn't find that in the Pacific Northwest, mainly because
I wouldn't think you would in New
Pacific
York City. I was really surprised when they said that. These are the people who took the name back, but some of them really.
I'd be pissed. That's how I identify. And I'd be like, I'm sorry. So I'm not allowed to talk about how I identify to protect somebody else, how they identify. I'm not asking them to identify that way, but that is how I identify.
If it's an 80-year-old man, if it was an 80-year-old man who was at the original Stonewall riots, it's
He
kind
can
of hard to
identify as
say.
a gay
"Fuck
man.
you."
And I can identify as a queer.
Yeah.
Like, Just not even going to get into that. I mean,
Right.
but that is a real issue with generations, you know, like
Right.
anything else. The LGBT community, LGBTQIA community has the same fights that every other community has.
Yep.
I'm going to use I couldn't even guess how to say this. I'd love to hear if Leah knows how to say this. It's my new favorite blue, which I know we've had the blue conversation like 5,000
Okay.
times here.
Tallow.
No.
Anthraquinone.
Anthraquinone. Yes, yes. Anthraquinone. It's gorgeous. It's like kind of a
This
weird.
one's matte. This is that golden stuff where they put chalk in the.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is the primary color I'm going to use for my mark making today. So I'm just going to actually dump it in. I got a tin down here, my watercolor palette, so that I can add water to my paints as much as is needed. And then I got one of my weird, not my queer one, because we're going to save that for a real good moment. I just got this weirdness. Basic. Okay. And I'm going to add water to my blue, make it a little watery, and then make some marks. So I'm going to go about, sorry for the dog. She's even worse at home than she would be in the studio, FYI. And making big marks like this. So I'm going to take all these pages that we have been working with, but I want to talk about the power of repetitive marks. One of the things I like to do is find a brush that has a tip that I like. And I'll show you what I mean by that. This one's nice. Nice shaped tip. You know?
Mhm.
And then dip it in the more watery parts of the paint, mainly because they're just a little more interesting looking. And then repeat the pattern. And I will cover the whole page in tiny little marks like this. It's not very interesting often while you're doing it, but it's very interesting once you have lots of pieces of paper that have it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's what we're doing today. It's really exciting stuff. But what we're going to find is that we create a bunch of interesting stuff. I'm going to use the same color all day that will look interesting together when we start putting it on boards and things like that. I will share pictures in the WhatsApp as we do this. We'll probably have lots of social commentary moving forward. This is a practice that the teaching artist Jean Oliver talks about. She calls it gathering marks. One of the ways that I do this is in like my sketchbook here. I actually will go to public places, bring my sketchbook and like one color paint and collect marks that exist in those spaces. When you step back and look at something, especially when you're looking for repetitive patterns, you surprise yourself at the interesting things that you will find. Some of the different ways that we can work with this stuff is not only by creating these tiny little marks, just by using like, say, this. Jean, however, went to the dollar store and has all kinds of new mark making tools that she's going to be using to create her own set of marks. Do you know what color you're going to use, Jean?
I'm using, since we're being queer today, I'm using dioxazine purple.
That's a great color. Good choice. Good choice, boss. If you were going to use a purple, that's the one to use. My mom, speaking of queers that love purple, traumatized me as a child. I grew up in a lesbian family. I had two moms, and I was born in the 80s, the early 80s. So we went through the 90s and the 2000s when it was really not cool. We lived in a small town called Cottage Grove. Here's this, my first page, and I'm just going to let it dry.
Okay.
And we're just going to keep moving that way. Grew up in a small town where if you live in Oregon and you at all have been around at all, you know about the OCA, which was what I would call a hate organization they would argue that they were a conservative organization that was created by Lon Maybaum to save education. Very similar to what's happening actually in Florida. For those of us who went through it here, it's really traumatic to listen to what's going on in Florida. But my mom loved purple. Man, she loved purple. She would wear purple everything. And I would be like, I can never look at purple the same. It took years of forced rehab, meaning that as an artist, you probably shouldn't have very many colors you don't like. And I forced myself. I just used my brayer for this interesting mark. It's beautiful. I can't wait to see the kinds of marks that your skincare thing makes. Some of these will be background splotches for other marks. Like I'll probably get some white out today. Not white out, but white out. And let some of these first layers kind of dry and then get some white marks. And then we can talk about how we're going to glue them in our journal.
Now, do we make any of these marks in the journal, the base paper, or just on the scrappy papers?
I would do it either way. What I'm going to say about the base paper, something that happens during this process that's really fun and magical is when you start to mix and match the marks, and you have big marks and little tiny marks, and you learn to create collages where they work together. So your base paper either needs to be like a neutral, meaning one big splotch of gray, and we're going to add color to it, or white. Like you want to keep it a fairly neutral surface. I often will use cardboard as my surface. Great material. It's free, or it comes on so many things. You can make it free.
Like if you smash the, I don't know how well you can see that. If you smash the baster down, it makes these really cool marks.
See?
It looks like a weird little furry animal.
Yeah,
I know.
because some of them twist and some of them go down straight. So, it's very cool. I'm enjoying this. Cool. I may have to buy more of these next time I'm at the dollar store.
See, the dollar store. I'm telling you, I had the class that I took where we were given a $20 dollar store budget. Was one of the best classes.
Yep.
So this is my rice paper, still drying, that I put gesso on. I'm going to let it dry fully. I did half gesso, half no gesso, and we'll be able to see the difference in how marks attach to it. Some other things that I like to use. This is a architectural design stencil is what this is. They now make them for bullet journals where you can just quickly do things. I use it as a stencil a lot. You can see where it's totally been spray painted. And these stencils are a great opportunity in, mark making like this, using your brayer or a brush of some sort to capture the essence of the stencil, is what I would argue. Let things dry. It's really just a rotational process. Go through and do your first layer of marks, go through and do a second layer of marks. Sorry for the squeaky chair, everyone. Welcome to home studios versus fancy work studios.
I was like, it's so funny, Chris. I was like, there is no way we can go another week without just getting to do some abstract work. Even if it seems like I'm not doing it, I'm actually absorbing every single thing that you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Every single thing. It's super helpful.
This is just the weird stuff. This is like the stuff you just do to hang out, right. Flush it out of your brain.
Okay, my little facial thing.
How'd it go? Oh, I love it. It's a good size. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Most bears aren't that small. So
And it's cute as hell.
it's not obtrusive.
I thought it was going to be like kind of pumicey, but it's not. It's just solid plastic. But
Beauty products are often really great resources for cheap, weird art supplies,
mhm,
as art, natural things like sticks and stuff like that, you know.
right.
Some other things that kind of come into play with this kind of work and this kind of play, I would argue that this is probably more play than work, but words, you know, not just my lovely queer squirrel page. Squirrels requires aqua. Please, please, pleasure, pleasant, helps, yelps, scalps, sulps. I'm telling you.
I like that one.
I'm going to just go through and black out all the stuff I don't like and keep all the stuff I do like. They call that a blackout poem. Dropping stuff. Sorry, everyone.
What was that?
I just
Ice
dropped,
cream.
dropped wet paint.
Oh,
Dropped a fish hook. I was looking for my phone. I wish you could see how you could lose a phone in the middle of, you know, all of this. And I don't even have my watch on today to ding it. That's one thing that I have not returned to yet, is watch wearing. Reasonably so, I think. May have to stand up and like, oh, there it is. It's under a piece of paper. What can I say?
of course.
You know, I'll take some photos for the WhatsApp.
You can if you want. I feel like this one, if you want, actually, both of you do it. I think that would be great. I'd love to have a couple of pieces to pull across. We pull those and edit them in. I have them edited into the videos. For sure, Carista, the abstract art lessons are viewed the most. And I was just looking, if you want to know, I can take a look right now and just check it. Let's see, where's my YouTube? Just out of curiosity, not that we care about metrics, but
So you know how I feel about data.
it's fun. Yeah, let's
I
see.
like it.
Where would you be? Would be in my. Oh, Kitty, don't cry.
Why are we crying, Kitty?
No, he wants to go outside. He cannot.
You're so mean, Leah.
I know, but you know what? He will totally get lost. He just will.
I know.
He thinks he's gonna
Believe
be
me,
the kind
I'm
of-
teasing about being mean. I know.
He thinks he's got so much energy. Don't you, buddy? He's just sitting here now. Here, wait, here he is. Here he is. He's just up here. Here he is.
Oh,
No, he's a sweetheart, but he's just got so much energy.
He's a
And
cat
all he can
murderer
do is run outside
and murder.
and murder. Yes.
Murder.
Murder. Oh, excellent, Chris. Oh, gee, those are so fucking cool. Look. Oh my God.
It's a fun exercise, Leah. You should just stop everything you're doing and do it.
I should.
Who knows what you come up with?
I'm kind of actually doing it on this painting that I'm working on. I'm playing with the mark making a bit, but I was finding it. I don't think I have the right colors that I need. So
Sometimes I feel like I'm into it, like, oh yeah, because really the power of mark making is repetitive mark making.
Right.
And then sometimes I'm like, I don't have the brain power to do this over
Anything.
and over again,
Right.
which is real. I mean,
This is the wire brush being slammed on the paper.
oh,
The-
I'm
the-
into
the-
it.
The lightest of the wire brushes.
I'm into it. I like all of the tools. I'm jealous of all of the tools you came home with.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. Okay, let's see. Yeah.
My friend who took me to
Are
the
you ready
dollars.
for are you ready for the top viewed videos in the last 48 hours?
What was it?
Number one is intuitive painting with Flora Bowley. Number two is something I did, a pastel lesson I did with Odilon Redon. And the third is an abstract art class with Jane, who was it? Jane,
Davies.
yes. So by far, if I look at the stats, by far, the abstract art stats are the ones. I'm gonna go to the channel analytics just to see if I can get any more.
They're fun. I mean, any abstract art class though is really fun, honestly, because it's about freedom and it's about
Yeah. Oh my God, it's all yours, honey. Every single it's like, that's right. 253 views on your and I don't have that many people on my channel, on your Flora Bowley. Abstract art, examining Cy Twombly.
Oh yeah, that was a fun one.
Joan Mitchell, 63. Jane Davies, 54. One of mine, Odilon Redon, block 1. And then we go back to abstract art. It's all abstract art until we get to face drawing. Then people start looking at it. But honestly,
I love face drawing.
yeah.
Ah!
Almost when I look at all the videos, what is being viewed, it is your stuff that's being viewed. So
People are just, they don't like my time frame. I get it.
And it's popular, so it's funny. Like, that's what I'm like, I don't care if there's just one student, let's do it. You know, let's go for it.
We're doing it. And we're making weird things, repetitive weird marks, which is just awesome. What was I just gonna say? Also, don't be afraid to like alternate the size of your paper. You don't have to fill the whole paper with your mark making. You can do a series of small marks, right, on one paper, because we're going to be collaging these together and layering them together to make interesting and beautiful kind of mini paintings. This is like the kind of work I do, like when we talk about like being out with COVID this last week. While I did work on those big paintings, this is the kind of stuff that's really fun. Just playing and making a mess.
This is what you said you wanted to do more of, which is really awesome, because you can do it in class every week, or however often you want to, do class. So
yeah, well, we'll see once the shop opens. And see, I did just basic tiny little marks along the edge.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna trim it down later, but you want to talk about how things work together. There is an edge that can be created, right, in our collage work. Oh, now we're going to, I think I need to get out some white, even though I, as I have said before, hate the smell of white paint.
You hate the smell of it?
Smell your white paint. Titanium white, because it's got titanium and it sucks. Oh, interesting supplies thing. So my gallery carries the brand of paint that I like to use because it's a mixed media craft brand. And I show the watercolors all the time, the water soluble graphites, my water soluble graphite pencils. And I got these interesting metallic accent semi watercolors.
Semi watercolors.
Right. I don't know what a semi watercolor is. I'm gonna be real honest with you. But They're beautiful. Look at the brightness of them. They're so
Oh,
fun
yeah.
to use. They have worked really well on canvases and paper so far. They have been a pure blast. So Cambium will be carrying, we carry the metallics. We just re-upped all of the water soluble oil pastels. As soon as the graphite pencils come back in, we'll re-up that.
Woo!
So that people can get everything they need.
Do you have your health meeting, Krista, set up yet with the health department? Is that Friday?
Hopefully Friday. I have to call them back tomorrow. They called me while I had COVID. So, and Audrey's already doing so much. I wasn't going to be like, and deal with the health department too. So.
Well, if anyone should understand when you have COVID, it's the health department.
Yeah.
They're totally cool about it. The lady was awesome about it. You know, and, you know, we were talking like, it's better that I got COVID before we opened than to open for a week, get COVID and close again.
Oh, yeah.
So. Now I'm making some white surfaces so that I can make marks on top of the other surfaces. And I'm going in, putting white down in my sketchbook.
Ooh.
Ooh.
The editing process in action.
Time.
Going wild.
I will tell you, Jean Oliver would argue that gesso is the best, white gesso is the best thing for this. Again, getting COVID and going home and not having access to your studio means that I just have white paint.
I'll be right back, girls. All right, mister. I'm coming in.
Look at Leah ditching us.
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Oh, come on.
This is interesting. This is that the page of from the electrical manual. And it's about electricity. It's not about what I'm going through. And it's a worksheet and it says list your isolation steps. I'm like, okay.
Well, that's what you've been doing lately, being isolated.
That's all it's been. I'm going to be that awkward human once I come out of this where I just don't know how to do anything.
Okay, when we're ready to start adding, do we just start gluing it?
I would argue that you
Okay.
want to play.
We'll play with it first, yeah.
First, get something really good. And then, so we used acrylic for all of this base. I did. I used acrylic for all this base.
Mhm.
Once you start to glue it together, I like to use watercolor and chalk as the last layers. The watercolor, you can add thin layers of translucent colors to bring out some vibrancy, to create new effects. And the
Mhm.
chalk, obviously, I mean, chalk is its own texture entirely.
So my office is we do 3 days in the office and then 2 days work from home.
That's
Except
nice.
that we did 3 days in the office and then 2 days work from home. And then we had a 3-day weekend. So I was home for 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then today was my first day going back to the office, which is why Inkling, who is needy all the time anyway, is now being particularly needy.
But Julie really struggled with, so we had to split the dogs for quarantine.
Oh.
Snack stayed with Audrey and Patchouli stayed with me, and they struggled with being away from each other and that kind of that change in their routine.
Mhm.
And I mean, I get it,
They don't
right?
like the change in the routine, do they? They just
hate it.
don't.
My dog especially.
Your dog is very sweet. They both are.
They're good dogs, but
They're
man,
really good dogs.
they struggled with this whole thing.
Sure.
Snacks
Where's
gets
our pack? Where's our pack?
and Snacks gets punishy.
Oh,
So she'll she refused to cuddle with Audrey. She was sure that Audrey was responsible. She doesn't understand.
Oh,
It doesn't strike me as that personality type. It's so interesting.
Totally is. Okay. So I got my first layer of this awesome gloopity glock. And this is where I can come in and make some smaller marks with this horrible pile of titanium white that I have. Beyond smelling bad. I always overdo it. Speaking of dogs that like their routine, it's 4:40, so I can hear my dog waking up from her dog coma because she has such a hard life. She just sits around on a large donut pillow all day long.
okay. What do you think of that?
Let's take a look-see. Again, gotta find my phone because I keep
I know I lost mine too.
pieces of paper on top of it. Because you gotta have all the space.
Right.
You gotta have all the space. So I really like your marks. My thing for you, something to consider is, so they get lost in the marks that are underneath them.
Right.
So consider something that's a larger, darker splotch that it might allow some of the piece of paper on the bottom left part has some really interesting dots that are super visible. That would be interesting if they had more of a plain background like this, so they could stand out. So maybe make a couple of pieces like that just so that you can do focus, because at this point they get lost with the marks that are behind them.
Right.
There's this tendency to want to cover everything, right? I think
Always.
that's so you it's I like to think of it as kind of a nervous habit. You're just we're you just can't help yourself kind of going all over. And it leads to things city. I see.
And we're also taught to we're covering the page. That's what we're doing. We're painting, you know, but negative space is super
Really
valuable.
Yeah. Indeed.
Lay down, Julie. Well, get to you in a bit. Oh man, something that obviously because of being locked in my house for 5, 6, 7 days now, I have watched some TV that I had not previously watched. I made the mistake of watching the world's most depressing movie on one of the first 2 days.
What is it?
Have you seen the movie 5 Feet Apart?
No. Oh,
It's the
no.
movie about two 17-year-olds who have cystic fibrosis and they fall in love.
Oh, I've seen, yeah, I know what that is. Mhm.
And the thing about it is, and I knew this because I actually had a high school friend with cystic fibrosis. And the movie is based off of kind of a well-known cystic fibrosis educator and activist. But really, like, cystic fibrosis, you're born with cystic fibrosis, you spend your whole life dying. That is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, and their cystic fibrosis people aren't allowed to be around other cystic fibrosis people because it is a genetic disorder that creates a bacteria in your body that creates too much mucus.
Ugh.
And
you basically drown yourself. Yeah.
And you can kill other people. Your mucus could kill other people who have cystic fibrosis.
Oh my God.
God.
So the whole movie is about these two teenagers, obviously, that fall in love because that's what it's about. And they're not allowed to be within 5 feet of or 6 feet of each other. But it's disturbingly COVID-esque, which is like timing with the movie. Where, they have to stay away from each other. They have to wear latex gloves that so disturbing. And then of course I fell down the hole because it reminded me of my friend Talana.
Right.
And she was she died in 2018. It may have even been 2016. 2016. Oh, damn, it's been that long. We were high school friends, so obviously. And people with cystic fibrosis die very young.
Mm-hmm.
But I fell down the hole of the internet cystic fibrosis movement from YouTube from the early 2016s, 2017s, that time period. Because their whole life is spent dying. It's some really insane conversations about what death is. What does it mean when you die? What does it mean to be alive if you're only limited in time?
Right.
Probably not the coolest thing for me to have chosen.
Especially when you're not feeling tip top.
You have mucus issues because it's COVID.
Right. Oh my God.
You're locked away from your family and the people that you love.
I just sent another one.
I saw what I remember. I just saw recently rewatch The Heat of the Night with Sidney Poitier.
Oh yeah.
In 1967, and who's the guy who plays opposite him? And actually, that was profoundly. It was a profoundly good film.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It made me realize Jewish people make great fucking films. That Norman Jewish. That guy fucking nailed it. Like they nailed everything. Like everybody was just as horrible as you would imagine. The relationship between this white and this black cop and was beautiful, but not cheesy at all. Like they fucking solve the murder and they do the thing right. And but it's very real. There's nothing and I thought, wow, in 1967, the filmmaker was very clear about what he wanted to say. Mm-hmm. Very, very clear.
It's very not clear. New. These are not new things. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. It's just like, oh, Jean, that's starting to look interesting.
I was going to say that's much nicer, Jean.
Okay.
It stands out better, so you can actually see the quality of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
little pieces with the little bits of yellow and purple on the top. Very nice.
It's also like Portland's going through it right now. You guys.
Oh my God, is it going through it? Yes.
3 mass shootings this weekend.
Are you kidding? Oh my God.
They had a cop kill somebody. They had 5 protesters shot.
I think
another shooting that injured children.
It's really been quite terrible. It's been, and actually, I just was talking to a friend whose husband is a trauma surgeon, and he said at his hospital alone, they've hired 6 trauma surgeons to deal with the escalating trauma that keeps coming into the hospital. This has
Oh
nothing to do with,
my
I mean, of course it has to do with COVID, but it's not COVID, right? It's gunshots. So it's just really bad. You're right. It's
What did I see? You guys have had 200 and something shootings already this year.
Mhm.
Something crazy. Like what is happening essentially is that COVID's in a state of, or COVID, Portland's in a state of political distress, and so you actually have gangs moving in, literally.
Yeah.
And it's intense to watch. I mean, our
Yeah.
crime rate is way up here, but it's property crimes and drug related stuff. So,
But there was good news today. The killers of Ahmaud Arbery
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was
all guilty of hate
Yep.
crime. They
Yeah.
all got guilty of hate crime.
Yep. Fuck those fuckers. They're
Yep.
gonna cry. They're
So
gonna
that, Kyle Rittenhouse is trying to sue various media personalities, stating that he was tried by media and made guilty before he was even guilty.
And yet he got away with it.
Right. And I'm sorry, they have news footage of you killing people.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
sorry you don't think that makes you look very good.
I'm sorry. Don't murder people. Yeah, it's interesting. What a weird time. This is what they call it.
You know, that's his cracker mother pushing her stupid little views.
Yeah.
But also, like, we're in late stage capitalism. This kind of stuff happens.
Oh, but something kind of cool last week happened to me.
Mm.
You know, I really like my new job, right? But I haven't paid too much attention to who the big top guys are. I mean, it's a private equity company. I don't really give a shit about that kind of thing.
Like, I like my job, but I don't really care about the company.
What the company does, which is, and I usually try to get jobs at companies
Right, where you care like what
I
the
care about. But at this point, I was just like, I need a job, you know?
Right.
So we were having, for Black History Month, Valerie Jarrett was gonna speak to us, and it was a Zoom thing, obviously not in person. And she and the top guy at our company, when the Zoom started, were just chatting away. And then when she finally started the official thing, she said, you know, he doesn't get enough credit for it, but Tim here saved Europe from the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And I realized that my boss, the top guy at my company, is Timothy Geithner, the Obama's Treasury Secretary.
Yes, just saying that. Yeah.
So I'm like, he saved Europe. Can he go over to the Ukraine now?
I know. Everything's in utter chaos.
But I was like, oh, so I work for someone who's not a horrible person. I mean, you know, he's still a finance guy, but.
It's funny, you know, I started in financial services, and there is a lot of power in educating people. There's a lot of power in how we treat money and how we train people to treat money, and you know, breaking cycles of poverty often starts with education. Astoria is in a very sad state right now of needing housing, desperately needing housing because we don't have inventory, and having a homeless problem and a mental health problem, and a community that is like fighting right now and trying to, you know, it's like one half of the community is trying to gentrify and the other half of the community is trying to save the community, and it is intense.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely
like door knocking situations where like people are going door to door to try and convince people to as they call, save Astoria from becoming Portland. And really it's just hateful remarks. Somebody was on Next Door stating that the door knockers came to her house and made her feel like she wasn't wanted because they don't want people with mental illnesses to have housing.
What?
She was like, I have PTSD, and you know, so it's this whole thing of like, this is how compassionless, you know, situations. It's really ugly right now. It's been kind of nice to be.
Well, people want to complain about the homeless situation, but if you had housing for mentally ill people, you wouldn't have nearly as bad a homeless situation.
Also, if you just looked at social research proves that if you give homeless people a place to congregate, crime goes down.
Right.
In truth, we could put everybody in houses if we just had the political will and connect services to those houses, and you'd be able to reach not everyone, but
we don't have housing to put people in.
Well, we can build it.
We
like
could
we
take
can
people's
pay.
second homes and say you don't need to have a second home.
We can fucking build it. Like, if I'm just saying, it's like the same way we could solve, like, you know, the environmental crisis. We could if we had political will. We just don't have political will. But it is absolutely possible that we could spend money.
Yeah, money's not really the issue.
Right. It's just the desire to want to control, like
scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
Capitalism trains people to be afraid of being poor. Therefore, you always have to feel like you have more money and more resources than another person. And it takes a lot within yourself to learn to help other people without the same resources as you. And, you know, that scarcity mindset, having been married to somebody who really is deep in the well of capitalism, scarcity mindset, we own 2 freaking houses and she was worried about us being homeless. I was like, we're like 10.5 million steps away from being homeless. We should just help.
You could get rid of one house and just keep the other and you'd be just fine.
You could sell one house and pay off the other and not have a payment. Okay, so my first little kind of collage-y coming through.
Okay.
Just like if we just taxed billionaires, we could really help ourselves.
Well, if we stopped giving the military all our money.
That's my point. Just like, it's not like a lot. It's not like a lot. Sorry, I go off because I absolutely know, like, all the statistics say this will work. I just talked somebody into applying to Open Studios.
Good job.
Great. Ooh, Christy, I like the dot pattern.
Yeah. My thought is something that I've been thinking about, and this is what comes down to all of the conversations we have in this space.
Right.
Is something that would be interesting in this is a pop of color, probably this really lovely cadmium orange. It's just a matter of deciding what and where that color splotch comes in. Might create one. Add a little bit of zazzle. This is the surprise that we talk about all the time. It would help though if I had the tools I'm looking for, right? Oh man. Okay, so I created my own little orange mark here just to add a little bit of exceptionalism to my.
Oh, nice.
We're gonna drive this guy in, figure out now, because it changes the balance of things, right?
Right.
I'm gonna jump it in. See, we'll probably go underneath. So again, losing phone and random slips of paper.
This just looks like Krista, I'm just feeling city in this. I'm feeling the city.
There, I added the orange.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Click, 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 click. Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, gorgeous. That little pop of color.
Yep, and that's really the secret to all success. A little pop of color.
Is.
And now I will glue it down with my trusty kindergarten glue stick.
Yeah.
It's a nice little random weird piece of artwork.
It's lovely.
And Chris is blue and orange here. It's like I live at the coast or something. Hey, dun dun dun.
That's fantastic, Carissa.
Yeah.
I want it. It's gorgeous. I'm not kidding.
Another weird piece of artwork created for the Roaming Studios. So cute.
Really great.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick little break and feed my dog
Do it.
because she's needy.
I'll hang out. Jean and I'll hang out.
We'll hang out.
Yeah. Jean, I'm so glad you came today. I was a little worried that we had gone too many weeks. We would lose.
Oh, no, I was totally jonesing for it. Like
Yeah.
pastel on Sunday and this tonight.
Exactly. I'm
And
so
I even last night I made some friends of mine hold still while I took pictures of them to have new faces to work on.
excellent.
I am determined to get those fuckers right. Oh, sorry, we're recording.
Oh, that's fine. Nobody's gonna pay attention. Or yes, if you do there in the audience, you know, Jean said the word fuckers. Like it happens sometimes. Oops, no, I said it. Oops.
Also, the dollar store has these cute little, they're there for stenciling to put in this inside a stencil, but they're little sponge painters and they make really cool circles.
Let's see. Oh yeah, Jean, getting there. Oh my gosh, it looks like, you know what this is making me think of? The one on the right makes me think of asteroids. Do you remember that old?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pew, 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 pew. That is like totally, it's asteroids. They look like those crazy asteroids from the first video games.
I love that video game.
Pew, 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 pew.
I didn't bring it out during COVID, and I should have. I have a classic NES system
Mhm.
that they made these new ones. They're like mini, and they hold like 30 games in the system now. And I should have done some playing of that. That's for sure. Hey. Oh, let's see what's going on with this piece of gessoed rice paper, huh? Here, one side is clearly gessoed, meaning that it feels like it's toothy. For people wondering what toothy means, toothy is the term when something is like has texture, has grab. Oh man. Well, kind of the same thing. This is interesting.
Oh, so this is good, Krista.
It looks the same, but we'll see how long they last. We're gonna play with them a little bit and see what they do. It's the point of being here, I think. We'll try a bunch of materials on them.
Here, I'm going to turn the recording off.